is fallacy in human nature to think that the present is somehow sacrosanct, that our way of life is enshrined and how life is will be how life will be. Of course, reality could not be further away from that. Our way of life has by definition supplanted the way that was normal before it, and thus it will go in cycles until the end of time or the end of humanity, whatever comes first. We are all in little fleeting moments of time. Really, actually, we're in segments of cycles. So why am I saying this next to these charts that show the share of wealth held by the top 1%? Well, I keep talking about how COVID has accelerated us away from 20th century modalities of life. Much of how we live and work, our habits, all these things were established post-World War II and pre-internet. People are creatures of habit, and so when COVID came and broke habits, we're seeing now an acceleration into a new way of life that, for those who can, is built around the internet. Well, the other 20th century reality that we are shifting away from, it seems here, looking at these charts, is the existence of a large middle class. This, of course, is in line with all the polarization trends that we keep talking about. Wealth gap polarization, belief gap polarization, and now, of course, people are moving in accordance with their belief systems. Now we're getting geographic polarization across America. So what do I mean by the middle class dwindling here, as we can see in those charts? Well, the middle class, as we think of it in America and actually in these other countries around the world, was a 20th century construct. And what do I mean by that? Well, for the first time really in history, we had a period where the majority of people were removed from survival tasks. The 20th century, what did it bring us? It brought us lots of things. It brought us the refrigerator, the blender, the vacuum cleaner, the dishwasher, the washing machine, the dryer. All these things that were done by hand before were automated. Clean water, germ theory, modern dentistry, whatever. All this stuff came in the 20th century. And with all this innovation, we had a middle class. And that middle class, for the first time, had leisure time, which prior, of course, was something that only the upper classes or aristocracy had. So we had the majority of people removed from survival tasks. They presumably had all this time. And now, of course, it is cycling the other way, where the 1% again is holding most of the wealth, and this is all part of the wealth gap polarization that's happening. Look, I'm not judging this one way or the other. It is what it is. This is all part of the cycle that's moving. One interesting thing that I often think about is what happened in America in the 20th century when we had this large group of people with time on their hands. What did they do with this time? And this is another, since I talked about human nature, this is kind of a little slightly different tangent or rabbit hole, but it's something that fascinates me. Given lots of time, not tied to survival, the majority of Americans watched an average of 4 to 5 hours of television a day and became obese. Again, I'm not casting aspersions or judging, but that is what happened. Without need for survival or outside pressures that structure time, most people make very, very poor use of their time. They got fat and they watch 4 to 5 hours of TV. Now, of course, that screen time is replaced by, scrolling memes on Instagram and playing video games. Replace that with the TV. That's just what people have done. And that's not something that is, that's not that same type of behavior that built empires or the same type of behavior espoused by those who crossed the ocean on wooden bridges, on wooden boats to go, conquer the New World. So these are all byproducts of our time here. And now, of course, the next cycle, the 21st century cycle, is coming. And I think we're in the early stages of momentum cycles building across the country. And it's going to be a very interesting next 10 to 20 years, I believe. So stay tuned, everyone. And again, if we can all just extricate ourselves from the time frames that matter in our lives when we think about these things, because for purposes of our lives, 10 and 20 years is a long time. When it comes to history, it's a rounding error, of course. So if we can just remove that time restriction, it becomes clear that nothing is forever and it all moves. But then, of course, for the purposes of our own lives, we should align ourselves where we think the wealth and prosperity is flowing for the next 10 to 20 years, because it's always flowing somewhere. And now, to circle back to Florida, this is why I feel extra blessed every day, not just because of the weather, but extra blessed to live in South Florida, because I believe this is one of the places that's emerging as a 21st century epicenter. So stay tuned, everyone. Very interesting times ahead.